Hello and welcome back to The Gist. This is your host, Chris Vetrano, here every week breaking down all the things happening in pop culture and, of course, bringing you some very special guests. And today is one of those days. I don't even know where to start because my guest does all the things. She's a model, an actress, a producer, a writer, and a director. I don't know what she can't do, but I guess we're going to find out today on The Gist. Please welcome my guest, Emily Ruhl.
Hi. I can't cook. That's my thing.
You can't cook? I think that you don't need to cook. I don't know where you would have time to do that. So I know you started modeling very young. You were 13, is that right? And you've done some major campaigns. But now you're doing all of the film. You're getting ready to do a TV series. Tell me, was the film and TV projects, was that something that you had always wanted to do even back when you were 13, or did you sort of get into the industry and start to find your love for that?
Well, I think everything that's happened thus far has all been happy accidents. I definitely did not plan on it when I was 13. I think I wanted to model until the end of time. But before I started modeling, I did a lot of theater as a kid. I actually made my debut as a zebra in Seussical the Musical when I was 12.
Oh, nice.
And I always wanted, bigger dreams than that. I think I was a zebra and always wanted to be in the front of the stage. So that kind of started the idea of acting in my head. But then as soon as I started modeling, I got pushed to the back of the filing cabinet. And then I started modeling, and I think every model wants to act, especially in Los Angeles. So that was the next transition, which really happened again by accident. I met my manager through my trainer and booked my second audition, which was a film called Newness that went to Sundance and I believe is on Netflix. And that got me an agent and kind of kickstarted that section of my life. And then during COVID, all of that stopped, and I just decided to start writing my own stuff, which led to directing and led to the production company and so forth. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, what drive you must have. And most people in COVID were not writing and starting their own companies and doing all the things that you're doing. Where did that come from? Is that part of your upbringing? Is that run in your family? Where does that work ethic come from?
I will say, just to clarify, my first 2 months in COVID, I was eating brownies in my pajamas every day. And then when you realize that, life is going to continue, then I had to figure out what I was going to do with all of that time because I had already alphabetized everything in my, pantry, so to speak. My mom is an entrepreneur and a lawyer, and I feel like that spirit really comes from her, that kind of do it yourself, rely on no one spirit. And then I think for me, I came to LA when I was 18. And I call them the welcoming committee, but there's this kind of group of men in Los Angeles who either they're producers or they own an eighth of a bar, or, they directed some indie, who make you feel like, they can make all of your dreams come true and you can be a star. And I just thought that was such bullshit. And I just kind of wanted to do it myself and not have to rely on someone else to make that happen.
Who
for
owned
me.
an eighth of a bar. Yeah.
Yeah. Those guys who act like they run the place. And you're like, no, dude.
Yeah, you have a drink named after you, but that's about it.
Exactly.
No, well, that's awesome. And then, so tell us about Blue Moon, because it's your first project where you kind of wore all the hats, and it was it was received so well and has won so many awards. Tell us kind of where the story came from and ultimately kind of what led to that project for you.
Well, I'd always been really interested in the concept of love, right? Because I think that's the one thing that we all experience and connects everyone. And especially love in a single night, and how that can be just as powerful and as real as love that's spread over the course of years for someone, right? And almost how it's more special because you don't really know the person. So you're in love with this fantasy of them and they haven't really fucked up yet. So it's almost the most pure form of that, and the closest really to that kind of love drug endorphin kick. So playing around with that idea, I went on a couple of dates with someone that I will call Mr. Blue Moon. And I actually wrote the short after every date. I think we went on 3 dates, and after every date, I wrote a portion of the short. And then he friend zoned me, which is okay because I got a movie.
Oh my gosh.
And then he ended up acting in the proof of concept for my TV show, and now we're friends, and he's my graphic designer. So the world works in mysterious ways. But I went on a date with him and I was like, holy cow, like this is what movies are made about, and this feeling. And it was so much like my teenage dream. He's like a musician that looks like, Harry Styles meets Shawn Mendes. It just was everything.
Mm.
And then one of my best friends who I'd met in acting class, she recently started dating women and was talking about her own experiences as I was bouncing ideas off of her own experiences and what it was like starting to date women and feeling underrepresented. And I thought, well, why don't I incorporate your story too? You can act in this. We can do this together. And this can be our little love story to our friendship as well. So it combined both of our worlds, and it was supposed to be called Little Spoon. And then somehow the tagline, if you believe in magic, or if you believe in magic once in a blue moon, you might just find it. And so Blue Moon became the title. And then there was a color palette, and the whole thing spun together in the course of like 6 weeks, shot it in a weekend.
Wow.
And then did the entirety of post in 2 weeks, which I don't recommend. It probably should have taken 2 months, but I wanted to make a Locarno, the Festival Locarno, a deadline for that. So I really churned it out as quickly as possible. And I knew how to do nothing. It was all kind of throwing myself into the fire and having to really come out of it because I didn't have a plan B. And I didn't go to university. So I spent my college fund, a part of it, on that,
Mm-hmm.
which really was like spending it on film school. I think that that's the fastest way to learn anything. And it was incredible. It was the happiest couple of days of my life, and the first time I really felt like I had a purpose. And it was incredible. And everything I do every day is just to get back to that place and that feeling. So
that's amazing. I mean, what a story. And I mean, again, like just the drive that you have, and you're sort of like, you set that deadline of 2 weeks and you made it happen. And then it ended up winning all these awards. And I mean, that's like, that just doesn't happen to everyone. So I understand, I think, what you say at the beginning, that everything's sort of happened by chance for you, or, I mean, happy accidents. But it's obviously because of the way in which you work and the way that you set your mind to something and get it done. So definitely we should all be applauding you for the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's very awesome. So I know you mentioned that you used your college fund on the film, and also to start your production company, Public School Pictures, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so tell me, because you mentioned I didn't go to university, so tell me about the name Public School Pictures, because I'm interested, given that you started in all of this at 13. I have to imagine that your relationship with school was probably unique.
Yeah, it was. So in elementary school, I really loved school. It was one of the things I was good at, and it was the thing I think I got the most praise for. And I was every teacher's pet, but I didn't really feel like I fit in very much. I was from a small town outside of Dallas, is where I went to elementary school. And I knew from the moment I could conceptualize where I was, I knew I wanted to leave. So I kind of had a love-hate relationship with school. I used to play hooky. I had debate class when I was in 7th grade, and I used to just tell my dad to pick me up half an hour early. He just believed me. But I was a good student. And then I transferred to an online program, which is basically what all high schoolers and teenagers are having to do now, except a lot less sophisticated, because this was 13 years ago, and finished my high school online. So I only really spent a semester in real high school and hated every moment of it. But there's something I find really nostalgic about American high school and really cinematic about American high school. I love the movie Grease. That's been really significant in my life. So there was all of that. And then when I was thinking about a name for a production company, which the production company, I mean, what it is now is also not what the initial idea was. I mean, now it's greater and bigger than anything I could have imagined in that moment. But the idea for that then was just to develop Blue Moon into a feature, and then 13 Stepping, which is my second short, into a TV show. 13 Stepping we're currently developing. Blue Moon we're deciding to let it live as a short right now. But when I was coming up with the idea for a production company, it either had to be something pictures or something studios. And I really like alliteration. So somehow in the car, I just came up with Public School Pictures. And I really liked the idea of this kind of grungy DIY, figure it out, no formal training, cool kid aesthetic that comes out of that. And out of that name, I mean, now we also have a clothing line that's a part of the brand, and we have like Lettermans and tennis skirts and backpacks and
Oh,
gym
I love
shorts,
that.
and we've really leaned into that. And I mean, now, so there's 4 of us at the company, and we go on like little retreats, and I call them field trips, like PSP field trips. So it's been a fun knock on words, and maybe I'm trying to redeem my high school experience for myself with the name of the company.
Well, you didn't miss anything as someone that went to high school
Uh-huh.
and went to public school. You definitely didn't miss anything. So, and it sounds like your version of it is much more fun and you're getting a lot more out of it. So, but I love that because I had a feeling that there was some sort of tie to the fact that the way in which you had your relationship with public school probably played a part. And I love that. And so you're also doing fashion, as you just mentioned.
Mhm.
So that's amazing. And then also you co-wrote the song "Her" for the Blue Moon as well. So you're also a songwriter.
Ish. I just, you know what, I co-wrote that with Olivia Barris, who plays Maya in the short. And, you know, I dated a lot of musicians. We can circle back to Mr. Blue Moon, but never long enough to get a song out of them. And so I always just was like, oh, like, what if somebody wrote something about me? What would I want them to say? And that's kind of how we worked backwards. And I think it was important to us when we were writing that for it to feel really genuine and not like we were objectifying the subject of which we were writing about. Um, and that just kind of happened. I mean, one of the songs, I had a playlist that I listened to when I was writing it, and which was just basically the world's greatest love songs. And one of those songs was Unchained Melody for me
Mm-hmm.
by the Righteous Brothers. And there was something about those chords that I felt really beautiful and haunting. So that was
Yeah.
some inspiration. And then she had written some lines, I wrote some others, we kind of moved them around, and threw it all together. And now it's on Spotify. Everybody can listen to it. It's called Her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was such a fun thing to do because I'd never done music before. I was in like choir and like I can play the recorder, but I'd never produced music or written anything before. So that was really fun. I'd love to do that again.
Yeah, well, we'll have to get you out to Nashville, and you can
Yeah, exactly.
hang with all the songwriters here and write your next big hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love that. And so tell us, you already mentioned it, but the TV series 13th Stepping, tell us about that. What's the kind of premise? And then ultimately kind of when do you think we're
People
going to be
can
able to
see
see
it.
something? Yeah.
Okay, so God willing, right now we're in the midst of developing it. So what I have currently is a short film that also acts as a proof of concept called 13 Stepping that follows an AA group in New York City and how their lives intersect and intersext with one another. Sex, drugs, and recovery.
Mm.
One of the taglines is getting clean has never been so dirty. And
Oh,
there's 13 characters, and it's based in New York City, like I said. It's loosely based on my own experiences with substances as a teenager growing up in New York City. I spent ages 14 to 18 in New York by myself and got
oh,
into all sorts of trouble. And
oh, I'm sure.
yeah. And so this series is how I'm kind of processing a lot of the traumatic things that have happened to me in my life. And it's the most important thing to me in my life currently, especially getting this made is the thing I think about every day. So currently the short's on the festival circuit. Then the short will be available on our website probably within the next 3 months. But the series itself, I've written the pilot. Now we're finessing that. Going to work on the deck, work on the pitch. I hope to have meetings with executives in the summer. That would be the dream. And then the timeline is if they buy it then and we get a room and pre-production starts and probably film 9 months after that. And then it probably comes out 9 months after that. So on the show front, probably a year and a half, best case
Okay.
scenario. But
Yeah,
the
it sounds
short
awesome.
front, a couple months.
So in your projects, you're very influenced by your own life and the
Yeah.
stories that have sort of made you who you are, which is wonderful. But what other sort of influences in pop culture? When were you kind of like, what do you draw from when you're, because obviously even in writing, when you're writing a story, the storyline may be sort of dark because you're going through, something dark, or it may be really, sexy and wild because you went through something sexy and wild. But as you're kind of writing these things, are you also drawing inspiration? You mentioned Greece, but like, are there other things that you sort of remember or think back to as like your influences in pop culture?
Yeah, I mean, film has always been a really massive influence. Francis Ford Coppola specifically. Um, I think when it comes to developing characters, the other people in my life I draw a lot of inspiration from, whether it's characters' names or experiences, or, for example, the character of Jasper in my show. An actor named Dusty Lockowitz plays him, and I pulled a lot from Dusty's own life to support the character. So I think as much as I love all of the art forms, whether it literally be, modern art or film or television or music, real people are probably who inspire me the most. Everybody's got a million stories, some of which are hard to believe, but that's where I find those little nuggets where somebody will say something and then I'll write it down. So I just thought, oh, that was great. Or you'll see
Mm,
someone doing something and you'll kind of take note of that. So real people, I would have to say.
yeah. So you're not binge watching Netflix shows
No, I
and
still am.
oh, you
Yeah,
still
no,
are.
I'm still watching like The Last of Us like this, like taking in
Yeah.
every moment.
Oh,
Um,
I know.
and I just saw Triangle of Sadness, which I absolutely adore, and I think Ruben Ostlund's incredible. So I'm still binging things, but I never want, although like, imitation is the biggest form of flattery. I think the freshest things seem to come from real people.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the story that's not told. I think right now in Hollywood, especially, it's like everything is just sort of being regurgitated. Everything's being rebooted. We're telling the same stories kind of over and over and over, and nothing is like feeling authentic. And we see it also, in numbers at the box offices and stuff too, starting to play out in that way. And I think, there's a lot of story to tell, and I don't know why we need to lean back on things that we've already told. So the best way to do that is to actually tell real stories. So I love that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's the bravest thing to do. I think there's a lot of reliability in a reboot or in pre-existing IP where a fan base is going to be there, and if you need to make a minimum, then that's understandable. But I think especially in independent cinema, which is where I exist, the freshest stories are always the most human. So that's what we try to do.
Do you find that it's harder for you, especially again, you wear so many hats when you work on these projects? Do you find that because you're so tied to the stories, that also maybe makes it more challenging for you and like in the direction in which the story kind of is going?
Well, I mean, so we have two original projects at public school, which are Blue Moon and 13 Stepping, which I did. I think, and then I have in currently 8 projects on our slate that we're just executive producing, about to be 10. I think when it comes to the original stuff, I actually try to be really good about being open to other people's opinions and advice and just being a really great filter for those. I think that I only have my set of experiences, and if somebody has a better idea, I'll take it. And I try not to be too, I mean, there's some things that I'm extremely married to, but then I have a little bit of flexibility, which I think is really helpful. On the other side of the projects that we executive produce, I just care a lot. I just care an awful lot. And I will think about those things, whether it be the subtitles or the poster or a specific jump cut that an editor did that maybe I don't love. Like I will think about those things at 10:30 o'clock at night as I'm trying to fall asleep. So I really, really care. And for us, it's important on the films that we produce as well. I was a Girl Scout, so I like to leave everything better than I found it. And it's really important to me that I make an impact in a positive way on these films, and that every film that we do that we're very proud of, and having 8 of them currently, they kind of all feel like children, and each one has a different set of needs, and you just want to get them to graduate to distribution, basically. But I feel like my attention to detail and my persistence just leads me to kind of not really have great boundaries and care and take it home with me, so to speak, which I don't hate. I kind of love it. I don't think I ever want to change from that. So
Yeah, I think the most shocking thing that you just said is that you try to go to bed at 10:30. I don't know where you're finding all the time to do all of these things. You have so much going on. I really truly like that is I can't believe that you're doing all the things, wearing all the hats. You've got all these projects in the works. Also, you also have a podcast that you talk to the cast members from your projects. Is that right?
Yeah, so I will say I can't take all of the credit with everything that I do. I have an amazing team. Zach Parker, Anna Patino, and Cassie Vivant that I just want to shout out to that make my life a lot easier and
Shout out.
help this ship run. And it's definitely a group effort. But on the Public School Pictures podcast, so I talk to really, I mean, sometimes above the line cast members, but normally everybody below the line that you wouldn't normally hear from on a press junket. So I've talked to my acting coach who was on set with me for both projects. I spoke to Zach Parker, who's my head of development that I just shout out, and Anna Patino, who's also our development assistant. I spoke to her. She used to work as an analyst at Warner Brothers. I spoke to Micah Van Hove, who's the director of one of our projects. I just spoke to Jim Cummings, who is the director, writer, actor on 2 projects that we just did. I've also spoken to my trainer who trained me for 13 stepping, and also James trains Charlize Theron and Kate Beckinsale for their stuff. So it's kind of a mixture of people, but I wanted to hear things from those I wouldn't normally. And I wanted to ask the questions that maybe I didn't have the time to ask in a development meeting. And I wanted to have information easily accessible for people who are new to this or old to this without having to go through a paywall. So there's that. And
Yeah, and
promote
I think
the
also
projects, obviously. Yeah.
yeah, of course you're promoting, but also like having these conversations with these people is probably also giving you these real people stories that sort of inspire the next project that you have, which because you like telling people stories, and so the podcast kind of makes the most sense for you, I think, in being able to have those conversations with people.
1,000%. And I had a newfound respect for hosts like yourself. And it's not the easiest thing to do. And I don't personally sit there and edit them around, but I make all the edit changes. So I spend a lot of time on it as well. And it's another kind of form of art for us. But it's something that I think I'm really proud of. It wasn't a medium that I thought I would ever get into. Zach, actually, my development head, suggested it. And it's turned out to be a really great and cathartic space. So I really love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and so where do you prefer? You've been in front of the camera. You obviously played tons of roles behind the camera. Which do you prefer, or do you love them both?
I mean, with 13 stepping, because it's my story, I feel a very significant need to be in front of the camera. If it came to it not being made or me being recast, I might go with me being recast. So that would be a tough pill to swallow. I think currently behind the camera, but every time I go to set, I kind of have that need of being in the like little girl inside of me who likes performing and attention comes out a little bit whenever I'm on somebody else's set. So currently behind the camera, but then every time I'm on set, it's in front of the camera.
Awesome. Well, it was such a pleasure to just get to chat with you about these projects, and I'm definitely excited to see more of what's coming from Public School Pictures. I think it sounds like you have an incredible slate of projects, and 13th Stepping sounds right up my alley in terms of the stuff that I love and the shows that I've watched, and so I'm already ready to tune in.
Yay.
So I will be first to that watch party when we can binge it all.
Oh, thanks.
But tell everyone where they can find you and where they can kind of keep up with you.
Yeah, so they can follow me personally at Emily Ruhl on Instagram. It's Emily Ruhl. Public School Pictures is at Public School Pictures on Instagram. Our podcast is on Spotify and Apple and just about everywhere else. PublicSchoolPictures.com is where you can watch Blue Moon. You can watch the trailer for 13 Stepping, the trailer for Playland, which is another feature that we executive produced. You can also shop the merch on PublicSchoolPictures.com. We're on TikTok at Public School Pictures. We're on YouTube. But I think PublicSchoolPictures.com is probably the best place to go.
Yeah, well, and definitely do that because as we've uncovered, as you get there, I'm sure you will find 10 more things that Emily's working on and other projects that she's got going on, because it sounds like you're constantly just taking more and more on. So continue doing that, because it's a very, very special thing, and not everyone can do what you're doing, especially, I mean, not everyone can do one of the roles that you play, and you're doing them all. And so that is super admirable. And I'm very impressed with you. And I'm very glad that you came by the Gist today, because it's been such a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much. Today's been an overwhelming day, so that just made me feel better. So thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad. We all have overwhelming days. Take a breath and just know that like you're doing way more than anyone else is probably doing today. So pat yourself on the back, have a good rest of your day, and everyone go publicschoolpictures.com, follow Emily on all of the social channels. And thank you so much for tuning into The Gist. As always, rate and subscribe so we know that you're there listening. And come back week over week, because we'll be here. We got more guests on the way and more pop culture news. You can go to listenitsvetrano.com for more up-to-date information on what's going on. And I hope that you all have a great week.